Good morning. How you doing? It is Monday morning, July 18th, and we are going to do a clean slate volume profile market analysis. We do this every Monday morning. Take all the lines and boxes and
Returning visitor.
annotations. Let's turn that sucker off. We don't need her. Oh, why is that coming on? Looks like it is off. All right, we'll turn that volume down. We do this every Monday morning. Start with a clean slate, and so that we're not influenced at all by what had happened last week. Last week was a very interesting week. We're waking up to what appears to be the continuation of a bear market rally, which started on Thursday. And, well, actually, I guess you could say it started on Wednesday, but we had kind of a tepid reaction to the CPI. And then we had the PPI, and for whatever reason, the market thought, oh, that's great. We got two major inflation pieces of news that say inflation is just off the hook. And so the market must rally then, right? Okay, so the market's rallying. And so this is a continuation of Friday. The European market opened up. It was just like straight up. All right, so there we go. That's the context. And now we are going to go to the chart, which is right here. All righty. So first step, when we do a volume profile analysis, we want to make sure that we get as much information as possible into the fray. So that typically means that we need to, let's see, maybe I can switch microphones here. Let's bring over this there. How's that sound? Does that sound better? There. Now I have the super duper fancy microphone in front of my face. All right, so like I said, the first thing we want to do is we want to get as much information in front of us so that we can see all the impactful and relevant volume that may influence today's market. Now, you'd be surprised. You would think, oh, well, look, we have all these days. Why don't you just turn on session volume? Well, we could do that. But believe it or not, session volume isn't necessarily going to give us everything that we want. But let's give it a shot and see what happens there. So we got the session volume. All right, so we got all these doodads hanging out there. They look like I don't know what they look like. They look like bananas just sort of hanging out in space. I don't know what to make of them. What we need is this big volume profile on the right to guide us where the actual support and resistance is in this market. So that's what we're going to start off with. And the very first thing we want to do is clear everything. All right. So let's get rid of this session. We'll remove that. And then we'll right click. And we'll remove all the drawings. And there we are. Whoa, it's naked. So there's the bear market rally that I think is commencing. But we'll see. You know, if it breaks above this area, who knows where it's going to go. As I said, we need to get the big picture. So the next thing to do is look at the big picture. I usually do that by going to a daily chart. And I don't even think that is enough, right? You know, because look, how are we going to tell what's happening in this area here when that's the only price action that we have to deal with to give us any kind of indication? You know, are these volume nodes by themselves significant enough? I mean, it's becoming obvious here that we have a big volume well, we have three major nodes. But what I want to do is I want to bring in anything that had happened before that. And in this particular case, that was quite a while ago. So we're going to have to drag that in and see how that, whoa, let's see how that changed things. You see that? It's pretty significant. We'll bring it in a little at a time and see how that changes things. Ah, look at that. Bring in a little bit more. I want to bring in at least enough stuff that will cover the bottom of the market here, which I think this does. Maybe a little bit more. Yeah, there. See, now it's falling off, and there's really nothing else to influence us, I don't think. Maybe a little bit more. Let's see what happens. Ah, that's interesting. Ah, there, we get the big drop off. Up, and our volume profile disappeared. That's because there's just too much data. Even with this high res monitor, there's just way, way, way too much information. That, believe it or not, was my iPad making that noise. So let's try to turn that down. All right. So what we need to do is we need to bring in and change the way we look at the chart. That's the view app. We want volume profile. All right. Why do I keep on getting that? Oh, there it is. Way up here. That's not it either. What is all this stuff up here? VWAP. We don't want VWAP. Yeah, we want that. Okay. Sorry. So instead of ticks per row, which is usually my favorite way to go, and 1 tick per row, that way I get the best resolution. In this case, there's too much resolution for even my 5K monitor to show. So we'll have to go to this and maybe put, I don't know, 1,500 rows. See how that looks. There we go. Now I think we have everything under control. That looks like a pretty darn good resolution there. And we'll get right to about here. Let's see how that looks. Perfect. All right. So there are some major features here that I see that I need to point out. But the first thing that we do is we want to pick off all the major volume nodes. Now you'll notice that my volume profile is sticking way out here to the right, and that's because I have it on about, let's see, how much is it? I have it on 75%. And I do that only so that it will accentuate the size of the nodes, so they're really easy to detect. All right. So I want to first of all pick off all the major nodes. Now this node here, this node here, and this node here is pretty simple. This one's a little disjointed, but it's still a valid node. I think it might even be comprised of 3 smaller nodes. So that's pretty interesting. And the other thing I want to pick off are the very low points. Those are very significant as well. And of course, recognizing that this is a huge volume well, and why that is significant is because if price were to break up above this volume node here into the well, then it's going to take a fast track to try to get to the other side of that well. Now that could happen. I mean, we're on this rather significant rally so far, coming up from last week, and we don't have too much further to go. I mean, we're already 3/4 of the way there to the edge of this node. And if we broke into this area of low liquidity, we could easily move up to maybe this little child node here or up to this bigger node. And that would be quite a change for the market. All right, let's start and get to work. So the first thing to do is pick off all the big nodes.
Returning visitor.
And yeah, that is definitely my iPad. Let's get that thing out of the way. Put you way over there. And what I try to do is find the steepest sections of these nodes. So like here to here is probably cool, and bring it all the way over. And what you'll find is that steepest section is pretty impactful in terms of how the market behaves right there. You'll find that there are a lot of there's a lot of defense going on above and below this feature. And that might be a little bit too thick. So let's thin that out a little bit. There we go. That looks better. Oh, I could have done it right up there. All right. So there's our first volume node. And because it's the closest one, we usually label those. I wonder if can I label that directly in the node? Is there a way to do that? Oh, look at that. I can. I've never done this before, but I'm going to call this. We usually label nodes with a T, T for target. So we'll call this T0. And we'll make that quite big. Right now it's way over to the left. I don't know if this is going to work, but we'll try center and see how that works. Or maybe we'll do it to the right. That way we can control it when we zoom in. All right. So I'll just put it near price, just like that. All right. Let's create the next node. I'm just going to copy this one and paste. And so it just saves a little time. And I think the next impactful node is probably right here. It's definitely skinnier. Oh, I hear one of my dogs outside barking at something. All right. Pretty sure. Yeah, right about there. Now it looks like there's two nodes here, but we won't deal with this one just yet. And maybe we'll bring this other one up to this child node up here. There we go. And let's put a little text on this one. We'll call this one T1. We'll make it smaller text, maybe 16. There, fits inside there. And we'll call this one, I don't know that this one is T2. There's probably one below that we should call T2. Maybe down here. I don't know. Let's do this one. This is sort of a major node. This is a little wonky in here, this area. I mean, it's not well defined. And so we'll call this one T2. All right. So I have the three major nodes. We have this guy up here. We'll call this one T4. And I number them in the order that I think has a possibility of getting to for a price getting to it. Right. So definitely get to T1, T1, T2. I'm sorry, T0. Definitely. We're already in T0. May get to T1. T2 is definitely a possibility because we're in a downtrend. And I guess T4 is also a possibility, but it needs something smaller. Yeah, like that. That's cool. All right. Next step is to pick off um, the LVNs or the low volume nodes. The low volume nodes are the opposite of the volume nodes. So those are the lowest points that come to a kind of a sharp point. If you look at it as sort of a mirror of a volume node, those are the LVNs. And what we usually use there is a horizontal ray and then just place it right inside there. So here's one right here at about 3867, which was also the same one that we used before, or approximately. All right. And let's create another one. Definitely right about here at 3740, 37, right about there, right there. I think that this guy up here is probably going to come into play right here at about 3983, and then maybe another one right about there. So you're wondering, hey, why are you drawing these, Ernie? Because you'll see as we start zooming in, these little green lines are going to be extremely impactful. Um, I guess an argument could be made that But see, these aren't that low volume. They're part of a much bigger node. So this whole cluster here is really confusing. It's a difficult place to call with any real. All right, so there's another one down here. So let's do that one. That one's easy to see. Right down here, right there. Now the reason for these LVNs is that when we enter a volume well like this, typically what happens is price starts accelerating. You can tell that by these huge candles, these uninterrupted candles. And then when it gets to an LVN, it will typically pause and make a decision. Either it's going to go through or it's going to get rejected. Now, there was no such pause here on this candle. That was just go straight through. Of course, it happened all in one day. So, but you'll see this time and time again as we zoom in, how these LVNs become very impactful about places of support and resistance. All right. So now we can start zooming in. Let's get down to 1 hour and see what we have here. All right. So now these nodes here are starting to come into play that we couldn't see before. And there was this major one. I would say that this was the one that was part of this larger cluster here. So perhaps we can start looking at these individually. And they're very well defined here. And perhaps we bring in just a little bit more. All right, that's cool. Yeah, we can bring these guys into play now. See them nice and easily. I haven't done this before. I usually just take text and then throw it right over the node, but this is kind of neat. I like doing it this way. And then this guy here. So we can see them very clearly. All right. So now we can adjust this one and say that that is just about there. See how we do that? And, an argument can be made for this one here, but we have this LVN that's right on that edge. So that's pretty impactful. I would say that that's probably right about there. All right. Looks like we might even have an LVN right here in the middle. So we'll do that one as well. Right there. And that definitely looks like a minor node here. Not T1. We're going to call that, we'll call that T1A because it's part of that cluster. And maybe this one's T1B, but we won't call this one. It's a little bit smaller. But we know that this particular node here, T0, is much larger than that. It has a lot of historical significance, so we're going to keep that up there. And then, of course, T2. All right. So there we are. We're pretty much done here. And you'll see that this LVN right here is pretty significant. It's like right on the edge there. And as you move these LVNs or follow these LVNs across, you'll see how they have provided, support and resistance along the way. And they will be very impactful when we start marking up and creating our scenarios from day to day. All right, so there we go. There's our initial volume profile analysis. Now what I'll do is I will back this off a little bit because it's getting a little bit too much. We'll bring it down to like maybe, I don't know, 40%. There. That's good. All right. There we go. There's our markup. Now, we'll be using this markup throughout the week to plan out our scenarios as we do our geo macroeconomic analysis every morning. Thank you very much for showing up. Let's see. Go back to the big head. And that's it for now. We'll see you next Monday doing the same thing. Take care.